Welcome back to Tabletop Assault. I'm Ross, and today I'm going to continue my segments on analysing the Chaos Space Marine Codex. Today I'm going to have a look at the Chaos Cultist unit. I asked you guys last week what units you'd like to see. A lot of the responses were Chaos Space Marines. Now I will get to them probably next. However, as a lot of you noted, they're a bit more difficult to use, so I want to spend a wee bit of time doing a bit more research and basically come up with a more informed video, or basically the best one I can produce possible. However, I feel I'm quite comfortable with Chaos Cultists, so I was like, yeah, I'll do that next and we'll get to the Chaos Space Marines afterwards. So for those of you who have not seen these videos before, what I do is basically I go through segments of, I look at the Chaos Cultists as you see in the Codex, so I'll look at their stats, war gear options and any special abilities if they do have any possible. I then go through some of my own tactics for them, such as loadout suggestions / roles that they are best suited for, legion traits if applicable, psychic abilities that might be useful for them, stratagems, and then a bit of a conclusion as well. So with that, let's have a look at the Chaos Cultists. So Chaos Cultist stats are as follows: movement 6, standard for most infantry. Weapon skill and ballistic skill 4, so less than Marines, but not bad for, humans as such, means 50% chance to hit. Hey, not bad, Strength and toughness 3, so again, not as good as a Marine, as it should be, but still kind of average for humans. Wounds 1, what do you expect for a troop choice? They were not going to be wounds 2. Attacks 1, again, very similar. If you're getting 2 attacks apiece, you'd be kind of laughing, though the champion does get 2, which again is standard. Leadership 5, with the champion being 6, so that is quite low for a unit as such. It does mean they're quite prone to fleeing, losing some to morale. And a save of 6+. Now that is quite weak, even flak armor or something would give you a 5+ save, so a 6+ means that your Chaos Cultists, if you don't know anything about cultists, are going to die in droves if firepower is directed towards them. So yeah, Chaos Cultist unit comes with 1 champion and 9 cultists. You can add up to 10, up to 20, and then possibly up to 30 if possible, so you can have a total of 14 unit, which is pretty cool. Each model is armed with an autogun as standard. Now you can replace the autogun in the unit with the auto pistol and a brutal assault weapon, and for every 10 in the unit you can replace the autogun with a heavy stubber or flamer. The champion would replace his autogun with a shotgun or a brutal assault weapon and an auto pistol. So yeah, I won't go into the stats of these too much. Basically, if it's got auto in front of it, it's gonna be sort of either rapid fire 24 for the auto gun, strength 3, 1 damage. Pistol is basically the same but 12, but it's a pistol rather than rapid fire. Flamer you kind of know. Heavy stubber you should sort of know. Shotgun, which is interesting, I've not really spoke about because not many units I see use them. It's 12 inches, assault 2, strength 3, 1 damage. If the target's within half range, you get an extra strength. Not great. And the brutal assault weapon is a melee weapon where the bearer gets 1 additional attack. So yeah, that's quite handy on that one in terms of the war gear. The 2 main ones you're going to probably focus on more than anything is the autogun, which is basically the rapid fire weapon, and then obviously the auto pistol with the brutal assault weapon. And I'll talk about those loadouts in a second. One thing to note, and I didn't realise, they don't have Death to the False Emperor. I didn't realise that for Chaos Cultists, but then again I suppose that's probably more an Astaris rule, so, Heretic Astaris, so you see on Chaos Space Marines, etc. But yeah, Cultists, they don't get Death to the False Emperor. There you go. So yeah, that's kind of what you get in the Codex. So what are my takes on terms of cultists? So I'm going to go into a wee bit of tactics and everything. First I'll talk about their loadouts. So my first loadout is We Are Coming For You. This is Chaos Cultists with auto pistol and brutal assault weapons. This essentially is your close combat variant for the Chaos Cultists, simply put, depending on how you're planning to play them. I'm less inclined to play this variant, and though it may be more rewarding because you are getting 2 attacks in combat, you know, 2 attacks in combat, and you also get the pistol attacks. And if you use Tide of Traitor, this is probably a better loadout to go by. And it also helps in a defensive position in an alpha strike. However, I find it's just not that effective for you if you want to sit back on objectives, which I find really, really good for cultists. Or if you do march up the field, it means you're not going to get cover, and it means you're going to get, eventually if your opponent do see 40 guys come up potentially with 80 attacks, you can bet a bit of firepower is going to go into them to make sure they can whittle down their attacks, and these guys don't take firepower at all. So they're not very good to march up the field either. So basically I prefer this loadout, you know, as a bigger unit. Reason for this is that they're more likely to act as, in some way, a backfield defence, perhaps to screen your vehicles, like Predators and a large unit of 30 to 40. It'll take a fair bit of firepower to move them, make a larger space for your opponent basically to go through when they drop. So if you have basically a whole bunch of cultists in front and your Predators or vehicles behind, they have to basically drop further away, charge them, get through all these models till they get to deny your vehicles in the back, if you've spread out quite efficiently. And then because the morale phase is at the end and you're likely to lose a bunch of cultists to the morale phase, then they'll still struggle to actually get to your vehicles. And if it buys you one round of sort of attacking with vehicles, then all the better. They are super cheap, so acting as a screen, as a deterrent, is kind of nice. You know, if you are planning to use them as a screen, I would definitely, against alpha drops, I would definitely go with the combat variant, because you're simply just going to get possibly a wee bit more attack back. With autoguns, probably not so much. At the end of the day, you know, that's what I would use them for, is either as sort of your screen unit for your vehicles, then go on a big blob, defend, and get some attacks back. However, my second variant is, I think we're just going to hang back, guys. Chaos Cultists with auto guns. This is your default option for Chaos Cultists, and usually my preferred one. The advantage of this is that you're staying back and you're likely to cause some damage through the game because you have an increased range. However, if charged, they're going to lose a lot of attacks, and generally, you know, they're not reliable damage dealers either way. I prefer this loadout simply because it's cheap to get a battalion. You can get 3 units of 10 super easily, and it costs you next to nothing, and still threaten from a longer range, so you can pepper off some shots. You might get something, you might not. The main point is you've got a battalion and a very cheap unit to try and stick on objectives as well. At the end of the day, cultists have use, but it shouldn't be either to be hard hitting or to take hits. Their main advantage is that they are cheap, very cheap, and can hold objectives and act as screens. There's a number of tactics to think when you're using them that may be helpful. However, this is dependent on your army composition and best way you're going to go ahead with them. So yeah, that's the 2 sort of loadouts I go for. Either, you know, go with autoguns, in which case take them in 10-man squad and just get your battalion and cover some objectives. If your opponent wants to stop you from taking an objective, you probably will lose it if they want to put some firepower into it. Or if you want them as a screen, take them big. You can go either way. Autoguns are close combat. I'd go close combat so you can at least get a little bit of retaliation in combat. Against an alpha drop, I've faced too many Blood Angels charging in turn 1 to think, you know, well, all guns is not going to help. But you never know, if they fail the charge, then autoguns might be the way forward. It's really up to you in terms of your use. So let's talk about Legion traits. Which ones are going to be quite advantageous to cultists? First up is World Eater's Butcher's Nails. When a unit with this trait makes a successful charge, you can make 1 additional attack for each model in the subsequent fight phase. Simply put, you charge, you get an extra dice. The advantage to cultists with this Legion trait is weight of dice. If you manage to make a successful charge with 40 cultists, which is unlikely to happen, I mean, how did your opponent not kill at least one of them? You know, maybe they had an unsuccessful charge and you're just going to return the favour with 40 cultists. In a blow of 40 with brutal assault weapons, that's a total of 120 attacks. Plus another for the champion, that's not bad, you know, that's like orc level weight of dice. Have them go along with a Dark Apostle or an Exalted Champion to get the most out of them in this route. However, it is very likely you're going to lose cultists in droves, and for each one that dies as a healthy amount of tax you will lose. And let's face it, at the end of the day, they don't hit that hard, especially when you compare them to Orc Boys, which, you know, they may die as well, but they're a wee bit more survivable and hit a lot harder. So yeah, next one is Alpha Legion, Hidden in Plain Sight. Your opponent must subtract 1 from your hit rolls that target units with this trait if they are more than 12 inches away. So you know how helpful this ability is to sort of subtract hit rolls. You know, and it makes sense that Alpha Legion would have cultists. So this one favours cultists in quite a large way. Small groups to achieve a battalion and try and have them set on objectives make them more of a pain to shift than you'd think, and makes it less likely you'd want to move forward. Prevent your opponent from getting, you know, that important first blood or kill points. So pretty solid call if you're going Alpha Legion. Have a few backfield cultist units to sit on some of the objectives, and your opponent will have a much harder time trying to move them. Not an incredibly hard time, I mean they're still cultists, but at least -1 to hit is kind of handy. Psychic abilities, Prescience, Warp Charge 7. If manifested, select a Heretic Stars unit within 18 inches of the Psyker. You can add 1 to hit rolls made for that unit until the start of your next Psychic phase. So, really super handy Psychic ability. There may be more worthy targets than cultists for this. However, keep in mind this really does work well when you have lots and lots of dice to roll. Works for both the shooting phase and the Psychic phase. So if you have a unit of pistols, all in range, all going to get a charge off, you know, you're going to see a big benefit to your hit rolls when that comes round. Mixed in with a certain stratagem, then you can make cultists into a very small powerhouse, but taking advantage of the amount of dice they can throw, well, a cheap powerhouse anyway. So yeah, out of the Dark Hereticus sort of general abilities, that's sort of the main one I think is particularly good. However, the god-specific ones can actually be quite helpful for them as well. For instance, Miasma of Pestilence, Warp Charge 6. If manifested, select a visible Nurgle Heretic Stars unit. Yep, just check they did have a Heretic Stars, not Heretic. Yeah, they totally do. Within 18 inches of the Psyker. Until the start of your next Psychic phase, your opponent must subtract 1 from all hit rolls that target unit. Mix that in with the Alpha Legion, and oh man, is that hard to move cultist unit on a prized objective. That's -2 to hit if they're over 12 inches away. You know, that's a fair bit of firepower you now need to dedicate to get rid of them. Equally, Weaver of Fates and Delightful Agonies is helpful as well to keep those cultists alive, and if they're on a very, very key important area. However, there's going to be, again, probably much bigger targets that you'd want to take advantage of some of these spells. For instance, I know Magnus is a huge fan of Weaver of Fates, but then again I might be going into another codex now. Either way, you know, just something to remember, if you are going to use your cultists as objective holders, then -2 to hit certainly means that their survivability to hold on to that objective is a lot higher. Stratagem Recommendations. So, Veterans of the Long War. Cost 1 command point. Use a stratagem when a Heretic Stars infantry or bike unit is selected to attack in either in a shooting or fight phase, excluding Renegade chapters. You can add 1 to the wound roll made for the unit until the end of the phase. Oh man, here we go again. Still one of my favourite stratagems in the Chaos Space Marine Codex. Adding 1 to wound rolls is just straight up awesome, just to make things a little bit more reliable. This means on average, along with Prescience, you can comfortably hit on 3s and wound on 4s. Which, with the amount of dice you can hopefully be chucking, then it'll be really, really handy. Problem is, again, there is some other units that would really, really benefit from this stratagem. For instance, Berserkers. Now, teaming up Berserkers with Prescience and Veterans of the Long War, it can be done you know, you'd have to use a different detachment of Sorcerer because you're not including Sorcerers in a World Eaters detachment. But you can use Berserkers, you know, say it's an Alpha Legion one or something. Give them Prescience, give them Veterans of Long War, and oh boy, wherever you chuck them at is gonna hurt. But you know what, Cultists can benefit from it as well. They do have, if they've got Brutal Assault weapons and not many of them have died, they can chuck out a wee bit of dice damage and basically overwhelm your opponent with dice. How useful is it going to be? It just depends on the target that you are going for. But certainly the more dice that get through, the better. Tide of Traitors. So here we go. Cost 2 command points. Use this stratagem at the end of your movement phase. If you do, pick a unit of Chaos Cultists and remove it from the battlefield. You can then set it up again wholly within 6 inches of the edge of the battlefield and more than 9 inches away from enemy models at its full strength. So this is kind of like the key stratagem that was sort of aimed towards Cultists, and I am a little bit dubious of it, to say the least. When it first came out, it got quite a few people sort of interested in it, and they sort of thought that's quite interesting. And it would be wrong of me to review Chaos Cultists without at least talking about it. Basically, being able to set up a unit to be close to your opponent is always quite helpful, and coming back even after one model like Cultist to harass your opponent is going to be quite good. There is a problem with this. If your opponent begins to focus on your Cultists and they don't need to do much to kill them, then enough to make them have a morale virtually impossible to pass isn't really difficult, and you want to use this when they're in a big unit as is. This can result in you spending command points to just keep them from fleeing, and then you spend more command points to get Tide of Traitors. There will be situations where you want your Chaos Cultists to just simply redeploy, whether it's a case of harassing your opponent's left, say Predators or Devastators in the back, and you're like, cool, I'm going to redeploy in the back and try and charge you and try and get some damage off there. Or they might have left a particularly key objective a bit undefended, and though it's very difficult for you to actually be in controlling of it, considering you've got to be 6 inches away from the edge of the table, and you can't set up an objective I think 6 inches away from the table edge. You can get there, but it just means that you get a bit of a redeployment of Chaos Cultists. There is situations where it might be called for, but it's not going to be 100% reliable. It may be that case, where you're down to your last Cultist, L40, and you're like, 2 command points, they're all back over here. And it may be a worthy investment. I do believe there was a scenario where I was told I should have done that, and I forgot. I think it was in the comments, someone told me to, and there will be situations where it's handy, but it's not one I would personally bank on. What's interesting is that I believe you also start their full strength, and you keep any abilities that you may have either cast on them previously, because they are just removed and then reset up at full strength. But any bonuses you might have on them should, in theory, still apply. But again, when it comes to these sort of Tide of Traitors, I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on them, because it's a stratagem I've just struggled to sort of see it being a sort of, that's really good. Other codexes have emulated it in a way. Admech have a very similar one, a bit more expensive, where they can do it with basically I think it's either the Breachers or Destroyers, which are a hard hitting unit, and if they come back at full strength it can be a real pain. It's a lot more expensive when you do it that way, but you get a really hard hitting unit potentially back, which is quite devastating. Cultists, they're harassment, but whether it's worth bringing 39 back for 2 command points really depends on the situation that you are in hand. So that's my sort of conclusion with the Chaos Cultists. They do have their use. They are cheap, they'll get you a battalion, no problemo at all. They can act as a screen unit, which your opponent will absolutely eviscerate, but they'll have to get through the bodies to get to some of your backfield units either way, which is what screen units are kind of do. They die to deny sort of areas. A couple of things I noted, I think it was in a previous video I said, where basically a cool thing you can do is basically the Iron Warriors Warlord trait, where basically within 6 inches of an Iron Warriors Warlord, any unit passes morale. Chaos Cultists are good for that one. Like, you can have a whole bunch of Chaos Cultists, your opponent's killing everyone, hoping morale will cause them to flee. Nah, they're sticking about. So that's kind of good if you're going Iron Warriors, to have Cultists as a screen for your hard-hitting artillery, just to give them that wee bit of bumper. So yeah, I really like Cultists. I use them more than I actually use Chaos Space Marines, mainly because I use my sort of, if I want to hit hard, I'll use other units. Cultists will get me my battalion and my screen units. So yeah, let me know what your thoughts on Cultists. Do you use them a lot in terms of what, if you get battalions out of them as well, and what's your favourite loadouts or any good times that you have actually used them. One thing I'm going to ask you guys as well is, I know that in the Chaos Space Marine Codex, and I'm going to ask in advance before next week I cover Chaos Space Marines, the unit, is that you've got Bloodletters, you've got Plague Bearers, Horrors and Demonettes in the Codex, as well as troop choices. Now I'm considering not covering them. Why? Because I believe as part of Legion rules, if you do take them within a detachment, that does include, all the sort of, other Chaos Space Marines, and if they don't have the Legion rule, which Bloodletters and Plague Bearers etc. don't use, then you lose the Legion rule for the rest of the detachment. So I think if you're going to use detachment of demons, just bring Chaos Demons. So I don't think of them so much within the Codex. Do you want me to cover them within the Chaos Space Marine Codex? Let me know, and if enough of you go, yeah, cover them, then I will in 2 weeks. But otherwise, my sort of recommendation at the end of talking about them would be, if you're going to use Chaos Demons, bring them in Chaos Demon detachment. So yeah, that wasn't about Chaos Cultists, that's just more for future. I'll cover Chaos Space Marines as you requested next week. So thanks again guys, hope you enjoyed. Please comment, share, like and subscribe. Always very helpful. Let other viewers know what your thoughts are on the units being discussed. And check us out on social media and Patreon, where you can help us out, bring more content, which is always very handy. And you can check out projects and things that me, Will and David are working on as well. So thanks again, and we'll see you on another Tabletop Assault Battle Report.